This here is the facelifted Porsche Taycan. We spent a lot of time in the Taycan. You would have followed our Taycan India relay, and this is the update. It gets significant changes to the outside, to the inside, but it's what under the skin that really matters. You get bigger batteries, more power, all of the stuff that we really like. Welcome to Evo India and welcome to our review of the facelifted Porsche Taycan. Before we go ahead though, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Evo India channel and leave a comment down below. Would you pick the Taycan over other internal combustion Porsches? We'd love to know. Let's start by talking about styling, and this is going to be quick because there are not too many styling changes on the Taycan. It was already such a good looking car, but you will notice the headlamps have been reshaped slightly. They're a new design. The front has been reshaped again to make it a little more aerodynamic. You'll notice the badge, the crest on this car is completely blacked out, no more red and gold, and that's going to be an identity for the turbo variants. This is the Turbo S. You've also got reprofiled bumpers, and the turbos differentiate themselves from other cars in the range with these blades up front. And then you come around to the side, you'll notice 21-inch wheels on this particular car. And inside profile, not too much has changed. You've still got your charging ports over here, the electric badge, the low slung stance of the car, the sloping roofline. It all looks very nice, very aggressive, wide haunches on this turbo. And you come out to the back, and again, minor differences over here. You'll notice this light bar that runs along the width of the car, and the Porsche in here is now illuminated. Turbo S badging indicating the variant, and you've got slightly reprofiled bumpers. So minor changes for the Taycan facelift. It's really 19-20 ka farak, you know how we like to call it, but that's about it. It's not significant. Something else that's worth talking about is the active ride suspension that this Turbo S comes with. It's going to be available on the Turbo that is sold in India. And what it essentially does is, apart from the driving, is ingress-egress comfort. So when you open the door, it lifts up significantly just to make getting in a lot easier. And once you're in, it sits back down. Step inside the Porsche Taycan and things really aren't very different from before. You get a very similar dash layout with the digital display up front, your infotainment and passenger screens over there. You've got this touchscreen panel over here for your AC controls and seat ventilation, which is all the same as before. The only real difference compared to before is this, the push to pass button on the drive mode selector. So if you have the Sport Chrono package selected and you have your drive mode selector here, you also get a push to pass function, which essentially gives you a boost for 10 seconds at higher speeds to make quick overtakes, which is really nice. But that's really the only difference on the inside. You also still get those annoying AC vents which you have to control from the screen. The Taycan isn't so much about the back seat. Porsche does call it a sport limousine because this is a proper, genuine 5-seater car. But that said, the back seat isn't really where you want to be. The Taycan is a very engaging driving experience by EV standards, and that's really the fun place. That said, here, space, not so bad. Headroom is a little compromised if you're sitting right upright, and if you're taller than me, I'm 5'10", you will find it to be a bit of a compromise. But the seats are comfortable, they've got good padding, they've got good support, you sink into them, they hold you well. Typical Porsche. So if you have to spend some time in the back seat, you won't be too uncomfortable, but again, that's the seat to be in. So let's head in there and see what the Taycan is like. Okay, behind the wheel of the Porsche Taycan. Now, straight off the bat, I need to tell you something. We are not driving the Taycan Turbo S that you saw me talk about just a moment ago. We are driving a Taycan Turbo. Slight difference in performance, not too much, but what's important is that this Turbo is what is coming to India. Now the visuals on the outside will be of the Turbo S because that is the car that we have the shots of, that is the car that the B-roll was done off. So apologies for the confusion. Just so we're clear, what you're seeing on the screen, the visuals are the Taycan Turbo S. What I'm driving and talking about is the Turbo. Okay, so with the Turbo, it's all about performance. They are improved from before because the updated Taycans get a larger rear motor. Now let's talk numbers because the Turbo is about the numbers a little bit. So power, 697 bhp in everyday driving if you need that much power for everyday driving. But then when you do launch control or you press the push to pass button, then you've got 872 bhp. Just let that sink in for a moment. torque big as well, 890 Nm. And what all of that means is that when you step on the accelerator and do a launch control run, it'll rocket you to 100 kilometers an hour in 2.7 seconds. 2.7 seconds. And this is not even the top spec Taycan. You've got a Taycan Turbo S above this, and then the Taycan Turbo GT above that. So this is like a mid to top range Taycan, and still you've got a 2.7 second 0 to 100 time. So that's the insane bit about this new Taycan. A lot of that is down to the new rear motor. So all of the Taycans across the range have gotten a new rear motor. That has allowed for this increase in performance. But that's not the only change. Another change is to the battery pack. So the physical size of the battery pack is the same, but now they have cells with a higher energy density. And what that's allowed them to do is, by keeping the same size of the battery, they've got a higher capacity battery pack in there. So it's now up to 105 kilowatt hours. That's a little bit more than before, about 12 or 13 kilowatt hours more than before. And obviously, a bigger battery pack means better range. So now you can easily do 500 to 550 kilometers on a single charge. If you remember the Taycan India relay that we did, we were stretching the base Taycan to above 350, 400 kilometers if you just push it down into efficient mode and let it do its thing. So these Taycans are really efficient. In fact, the shape of the Taycan has been made a little more slippery as well to improve efficiency, and all of that does make a difference. But I think the biggest improvement to the Taycan now is the chassis. The Taycan was already very sweet to drive, very usable in Indian conditions, but now it gets a really neat trick up its sleeve, and that is active suspension. So this is Porsche's new suspension technology. We saw it on the Panamera first, and now it's filtered into the Taycan. And what it has is very advanced damping systems which are connected to hydraulic systems with motors in them, and what they effectively do is negate the need for roll bars. So these dampers control all of the body movement of the car, whether it's vertical, whether it's pitch, whether it's roll, whatever it is. It's these dampers with pumps that pump in fluid to sort of dictate how this car behaves on the road. And what that effectively allows you to do is control the car's movements a lot better. So when you're doing a launch control, because it can control pitch, it doesn't squat as much. It's a much more controlled squat. In fact, Porsche engineers a little bit of squat in there, but if they wanted, they could keep the car absolutely flat and you could just rock it forward absolutely brutally. And the same thing applies to roll. You know, you don't really roll so much because the dampers on the outside are effectively pushing upwards so that you counteract the lateral loads on the car, and that just sort of quietens down the driving experience inside the cabin a fair bit. You're not getting chucked around and moved around like you usually would in an electric car. It's a lot more comfortable for the passengers as well, because the movements are what effectively get you sick, you know, when there's a lot of jerking in the car and stuff like that. But all of that is minimized, and it just makes for a much better ride. Ride quality improves as well. Now, Dubai's roads are flat, but I remember when we drove the Panamera in Germany, they actually took us down some not so great patches of roads, and it was eye-opening how good this active suspension manages to control the body of the car and also keep comfort on the inside at the same time. So active ride, full thumbs up in my opinion. The ingress egress is obviously an added benefit because it just lifts the car up and makes it easier to get into and out of, but it's an 11 lakh rupee option on the Taycan in India, and I think that's an option well spent for. So if you are going to get a Taycan, you should get the active suspension, but mind you, it's only available on some variants. So you need to have all-wheel drive, you need to have the high-performance battery, and if you've got both those things checked, you can get the active ride. Apart from that, the Taycan's driving experience is very familiar. You know, you sit nice and low, it feels more sports car-y than regular sedan, it feels properly quick, it feels special, it just does not feel generic or run-of-the-mill for a single moment. Okay, it doesn't have the drama and the emotion of an engine, you know, but that's, you know, every electric car has it, and by electric car standards, the Taycan is actually one of the nicer ones out there. It's one of the more emotional ones out there, and one that you actually don't mind getting up in the morning to drive a little bit. So these improvements in terms of the power, in terms of the performance, in terms of the battery, and in terms of the suspension are actually significant changes. So while the exteriors and the interiors haven't really changed, you know, push to pass, literally the only change on the inside, so minor, but there has been significant re-engineering underneath the skin that makes it a lot more enjoyable. The Porsche Taycan will be making its way to India. Bharat Mobility is where you will see the cars, and we will know the 2025 pricing of these models. As of now, the turbo variant is priced at Rs 2.5 crores, expected to get a slight bump in price by the time we hit January next year. And the Taycan, it remains a very nice car to drive by EV standards. It's probably one of the best cars you can get in terms of just the emotional driving experience. It's fast, it handles, it's a Porsche, so it feels special, and it looks really good. It does so many things so well. So as far as EVs go, this one's the one to have.